Hello, 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 everybody. How is everybody doing? All right. Hopefully, you can hear me and you can see me very well today. Let me just check out my exposure here. All right. That is looking good. All right. So, how is everybody doing this lazy, lazy Sunday? Hello, hello. All right. We have 3 people in the chat, which is good. Good, good, good. All right. And I am going to start preparing the scene and everything that we are going to be talking today, because today is the first time that I'm going to talk about PCGs, just a little bit, just well-informed opinion, but a very early opinion, all right? Because we cannot go too hard on it, because as you know, it's a beta new feature, so let's go easy on it. So we should be using, this thing. This is what we're going to use today. All right, so a little bit of news maybe to start while we wait for more people. We have 5 people. Welcome, welcome everybody. I don't know if you all notice, 5.11 and from what I was informed, also 4.27 got an update, but for some reason it stayed on the same version. Like it did update something, right? Because it showed the update on the launcher, but then it ended up being the same number. So I was like confounded about why would they update 5.11 once they have 5.2 preview to already out. But I don't know, I was like completely completely without ideas or opinions about what just happened with that. So if anyone knows, let me know in the chat. In other news, I'm still using my old, and I see that it's already failing. Oh my God, this thing is going to be hard. All right. Let me see if that is a little bit better. As soon as I launch Unreal, my camera started acting weird. This is going to be very hard. Well, part of, that news, I hope at least you could hear me well, because I don't care about the actual camera once we get into Unreal. But the audio is important. All right. So let me know if you can hear me well, and let me know if you can hear me well, and if there is no issues with the audio before we start. All right. So I'm going to launch Unreal again, and I'm going to, all right. Thank you. I'm going to launch Unreal again, and I'm going to switch to sharing Unreal so you can hear me, just hear me, and not the camera. All right. So in the news also, the new marketplace free assets are out since last week. So be sure to get them. They're not the greatest one. Like, I love that there are a couple of things with particles. Yeah, because I love particles, and I hate to sit down and start, hello Franco, and start playing with them, even though it was my gig for a couple of years, creating hair and particle simulations in Maya. But yeah, these Niagara particles are a little bit out of my league for now. I can do a couple of things Hello, Mark. I can do a couple of things, but nothing, too crazy. All right, so let me just go here and change to Unreal and hope that you can hear me well. All right, I'm going to turn up this thing. Let me know if you hear something weird with my voice so I can fix it. But for now, it should be working. All right. All right. So, Franco, you are going to recognize this thing. Here it is. Do you remember? Yes, this is a map that Franco and I worked together for Unreal Engine Virtual Production Summit. It has a couple different, things now, but it's mostly the same. El Cañón. So I was testing PCGs here and trying to make them look, because, again, and let's get into, the subject of today's matter. I tested PCGs and I think they have a bright future. But for now, there are a little bit too beta, right? It's like this new thing that is starting, and I have a few, opinions on this thing. So before we got any sort of procedural way of scattering stuff, we did have, the foliage asset and the foliage tool, and whatever you see here is just foliage planted with the foliage tool, by hand, selecting what you want to grow where, and, do a little bit of painting and getting everything, in place. So if you want to know what is foliage here, I can, turn it off. So you can see that these was, placed by hand, everything that you can see here. So all of these are actors that, you can select and move around, just like this one, right? And with a little bit of landscape and a landscape material, and the landscape material has a little bit of grass in this. Of course, it is not actually grass. It's just, scattered rocks, which are not, pretty impressive. Like the way that Unreal scatter grass is not very, appealing. Like it will distribute it and that's it. But won't give it some sort of organic look, right? And that's one of the things, that I really care about when you are creating some sort of organic, exterior, right? So, oh yeah, for sure. They might be some kind of fix for the actual launcher. Yep. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, but then, we could use, of course, the actual foliage. So this is a little bit of foliage, around, and this is new. Let me just show you what I did here. So this is all the foliage. All the foliage that you can see here is the one that comes with Royal Australia, right? And it does look, it does look, very, very, very well, right? So PCGs, I tried them and I believe that they are very good. Like you can distribute stuff. Let me just open a PCG that I was testing with. And this is, the first thing that I have against them right now. And not against them, but against learning them. And that's the main issue of this video, right? Like don't learn it still. Like I was trying to learn this thing. I'm not that slow, in learning stuff, new stuff, but this thing was hard. And mainly because every time that I found some dude or some channel that really, explain things well, everything that I was just testing was not, there. It's like it changed between the different previews. Like in Unreal Engine 2, 5.2 was like a version, and then, preview 1 and then preview 2, like it changed a lot. And, they are going to be teaching you like, all right, and you grab this node and you put it there, and the thing is not there. It doesn't have even the same name. Or if you drop it and start, tweaking with it, like everything will disappear and you're not going to be seeing, the thing working. So it's weird. Even though, I followed one of the easiest one from the actual GDC presentation. The first one where they, created the mushrooms inside the cave, like that thing is not working with 2 days, with what we have today in PCG for some reason. But so that would be like the first thing that I would say, all right, don't go about and mess with that, just because it is evolving so fast and it is in beta stage. So all the information is mixed, everywhere. So you're going to find some things that will work and some things that you're going to have to start testing and working around to make, whatever someone is trying to teach you from the internet, right? So we have a message. Save the processor affinity in Windows to remove CPU 0 and 1 from the Unreal Engine to hopefully improve performance of other APS when real abuse the OS. All right, yeah, of course. Is to tell you the truth, I don't care about Unreal. All right, in this situation, like I'm thinking, or my thinking is that OBS is crap. Really, that's what the thing is. Like Unreal should use as much CPU and GPU as it wanted. Like I don't care. That's why it's here, right? That's why we are here. We want to see Unreal doing great stuff. But OBS is the one that is not allowing it. Like OBS is having tantrums, fighting for resources and, making everything looks awful all the time. So I'm replacing it. Like as soon as I get my Atom from Blackmagic, I'm going to stop using OBS. Like this thing is done. I'm done trying to figuring out what is happening. It got to a situation where I'm kind of hating it. Like I hate doing streaming knowing that this thing is going to fail somehow. Like it's going to freeze or it's going to start acting up. So as soon as I get my Atom, I'm uninstalling OBS for good and not returning anymore to that thing. Like it's crap. It simply don't work. I don't know how people, I know how they do it. They use a dual machine setup. Like that's the only way that people can work with OBS, eating up 30% of your GPU, right? And at the same time playing, they are using, twin CPUs. Like they use one just for OBS and another one but that's not what I want. And in fact, what I'm going to do with the Atom is exactly that. I'm going to have like a separate streaming machine, a very compact streaming machine that is going to be in charge of, everything streaming wise, right? And my computer is going to be just like a camera connected to it, and that's going to be fine. All right, so let's keep talking about these new things here. So the other thing that I'm going to say about not learning them still is that it's simply they are too new. They are changing so fast. So whatever you learn now might not be available in the future. So it's hard to be how it's called, an early adopter, right? And PCGs are not cool, when you try to be an early adopter. Like I've seen people doing, very wonderful things, but again, like I try always to test things compared to what we already have, because I don't like to learn something like if I know how to do it, with an existing tool, right? And that's a tool that we're going to talk today. It's part of the lecture that I give at the fellowship when we talk about foliage. So hang on, we're going to get there soon. There are a couple more things that I could, say about PCGs. And one of those is that I hope, because Epic has this way of working. So Epic is going to work with some client, and that client is going to ask for some feature, and they're going to be delivering that feature, right, to whatever fit their needs, right? And then they're going to strip it out of everything, proprietary from that client, and then they're going to include it inside Unreal, right? In this case, PCGs for sure happen to go on that trend, and that is good, right? We're getting something that was used or created by a very, very big studio or something like that, which is always, many things are inside Unreal work that way. Like having good UVs and high precision UVs came out from working with Lamborghini. Like they were watching the reflections on the actual metal of the cars, and they were saying like, this is crap, like this is not looking well. So they developed, high precision normals to get like very good reflections. And now we got them in Unreal. So that's wonderful, right? But there are times, give me just, so there are times that Unreal will do that. And because you can keep improving it, they won't improve it. And, one big example of that is, for example, landmass, right? So landmass was, great. I believe that the landmass process was one of the biggest improvements into landscaping inside Unreal and world building inside Unreal. And it was just, a very simple thing where you're going to have layers, right? And you're going to be able to sculpt with layers. So I can create, a new layer here like this. And now I can, if I select that layer, I can, start sculpting around. Come on, sculpt. There it is. And I can, start sculpting around. And yeah, that's great, right? And now if I don't want to see that sculpting anymore, I can, tame it down or completely clear, right, what I just sculpted. And that is fine. And there they were accompanied by these, and this is where I got the big beef and the big issue, the blueprints. So you could, and I don't have any blueprints here, and I believe I don't have any blueprints because I might not have landmass in this landmass. Yeah, I don't have it. Not to worry. But so we were provided with a couple of blueprints brushes here, and you're going to be able to do like spline type of, deformation in the landscape, and you could do like other types of deformations, non-destructive deformations to your landscape, which were great. And I was like, yeah, this is the future. We're going to, replace Brushify, because by that time Brushify already existed. And I was so happy that we were going to have that replacement for Brushify, or like an internal, a native vanilla sort of Brushify inside Unreal, right? But the thing is that it just stopped. Like we got those 3 different blueprints and no more, and that was it. And Brushify said, all right, now I'm going to work with those and I'm going to extend them. So the market was, open for Brushify, because now they got a couple of maybe engineers that start working with the thing, and now they have these beautiful blueprints that you can use within landmass to help you create. But it's a paid thing, right? Or you could sit down and start, learning them and see how they work, so you can, make them better. You can do them on your own. So that's a pity, right? In that sense, having something that, was announced and was, so great, to just, be there without having any more updates. The other one that I can mention that follow these same trends is water. Like water tools in Unreal are awful, to say the least. They're not good, right? But that's where, one of my theories comes true, right? When I talk that everything about Unreal Engine is Fortnite, to tell you, and that is fair and plain to say it, because if you see water inside Fortnite, it is the water from the water plugin in Unreal Engine, but it's so much better. Like it's so much better. Like it does react well, and it does interact with the landscape fairly well. And it has, the foam, and it has, all those beautiful things that you should have, out of a package for the water inside Unreal. And it's simply not like that. If you try to create like an ocean with that thing, or a river that comes out of a lake and connect into an ocean, you're going to very, very early, find out that it's very hard to make it look well, because it does have a couple of issues, right? Landmass, being, out of date for so long might be one of those. And again, this whole thing might point to a complete revamp of the landscape, of the landscape tools, which PCGs might be, the starting point of it, which is great, right? Because having things procedural is the way to go when you're talking about creating a big landscape. You don't want to go and start, sculpting big mountains, right? You want a tool like Brushify, right, that will allow you to have like different already carved features, and you can combine them, non-destructively. And PCGs are exactly that. So PCGs fit in that mold. But I would be really disappointed if PCGs fit in that mold the other way. So knowing that this is going to be a thing that we, as users are going to have to improve, on our own, or wait till, maybe Brushify or some other content creator create consoles for it. Because if let's open this PCG so I can show you a little bit of other things that I have found out. PCGs is yet another Blueprint-like editor that doesn't work like Blueprint, which is also one of the things that I don't believe is good about it. Like we have too many things now that looks like Blueprint, but they are not blueprints, or at least they don't follow the same how could I say it? The same rules as original blueprints. So, for example, these kind of things where you can connect two outputs to one input, that on the, actually execution threads, that's one of the things that doesn't happen with blueprints. So, yeah, if you know how to work with Blueprint, this is all right. But if someone wants to start working with blueprints because of these, then when he tries to actually use blueprints, he's going to be completely disappointed at many things that blueprints will not allow him, to do. So yeah, that's, another thing that I don't believe is completely positive about PCGs. But then, many of these, transform points and density filters and all of that, some are actually scripts, right, that we're going to be able to later on, edit, duplicate, and create, our own. But some of those, let me see if I can find one. Now I don't seem to find one of those, but let me just go and find it. Maybe this one? Nope, not this one either. So my point is that many of the actual functionality of these things are blueprints, and you can create blueprints. The same way you can create your own blueprints for behavior in the behavior tree for AI inside Unreal. You can also create blueprints here to extend, the limitations of the actual private class, right? And these will connect also with another thing, that if you want to learn how to use PCGs, the easiest way that I found, or the most informative that I found, was to actually go into the engine plugin section and search for procedural. And I'm guessing it's this one. Yeah. So you have a sample content that you're going to be able to follow, like Simple Forest. And if you double click here, it's going to, open up. it's going to open up like a sample scene. And, because this one is already working, you can, take this thing apart and see how it works, which is great, right? But from here, I also find out that there are a couple of blueprint elements, and all of these are blueprints that are used into the different menus, into the different sample scenes, sample content. And yeah, they are actually blueprints, not, PCGs blueprints. These are blueprints, right? So these gives me, and they are pretty complex as you see. So this gives me the heebie-jeebies when I see this, because I don't want these, or I hope this doesn't go the same route as landmass, right? Where they're going to tell you like, all right, you can improve it with blueprints. Good luck. And that is that is our feature. And now it's yours, to improve. And that is also cool, right? We want all to improve on things, but we don't want, a half-baked feature, like, for example, landmass, to then, be open for you to do all the work, right? To improve it and to make it, even greater than it is. So that's the second thing. So only time will, prove me wrong in this case. But it has been a trend. So I'm just informing you why you should not learn PCGs like right now. Like, give it a little bit of time, and it's going to prove me wrong or prove me right, in that regard. But, for what they are cool, right? Another, and this is the last thing that I'm going to say about PCGs. And we're going to continue talking about PCGs once we start talking about that procedural tool that we're going to talk today. And that is that everything within PCGs is driven by randomization, right? And that's not how nature works. Like, nature has, some pretty established laws that are possible to emulate through randomization, but it takes so much work to do that. So I'm guessing like someone somewhere is going to do all the math that will create that organicity, right, on the distribution and scattering of stuff around. And then we're going to be able to use it, with any luck, for free. But as they are right now, if you want to do something, and again, it's not like me trying to do something wacky and wild, it's just what we already have inside Unreal. And that's why I will say, if you want to really learn this thing and really learn it good, you gotta be sure that you know how to work with procedural foliage inside Unreal. And that is the solving of the mystery of what this stream is going to be about. We are going to be talking about procedural foliage, right? That's the whole thing, right? Nothing crazy. And how, it will be a lot, and I mean a lot better than this thing right here, right? At least, and again, to be fair, this is a beta feature. It is not complete. Epic is bound to make it a lot better. And I know that there are going to be a couple of artists who are going to start working with it and develop those blueprints that work within PCG. That will make it, so much better than what is now. But the thing is that this is not, we can do so much better, right? Let me show you how. So I'm going to hijack just to show you that this is a thing that we already have, and they are very, very good. So I'm going to hijack the ones from the rural Australia. So if I type procedural, and let me, let me do a little bit of showcasing, and then we go back and start from the start, right? So I have a couple of these procedural foliage assets, right? And I'm going to start dropping them right here. And I should, I should drop them all so you can see the actual magic. So that's it. We have them all right there, and we're going to try to encompass maybe not all, but a good. So one other thing, so let's start comparing, right? And let's start saying, what are they good for? Like PCGs are not actually blueprints, even though I know that you could do everything that a PCG can do with actual blueprints, but they are fast. They are very, very fast. The way that, you can create a couple of hundreds of assets inside your scene, of actors inside your scene. It's great. It's the way to go, right? To have fast things that can iterate, very fast. Although, they're not, when you have the actual graph open, they are a little bit slow. Once you have your PCG volume in and you start moving it around, it's like very, very fast. So for example, let me grab the actual PCG volume here. And if you move it, or if you scale it, it's going to scale to the actual size that you are. So I'm going to do like a fair comparison. It's not fair in the sense that Procedural Foliage has been here for a couple of years now, and they are very, very good. So it's not going to be totally fair, the comparison that we're going to do right now. But let's see if we can, do a little bit of comparison. What, PCG, as they are shipping it, right? Not, as the final form. And so what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually, this is the thing. So PCG is struggling to plant, these many very low poly stuff into this thing. Once it's planted, it's great, right? Because I'm guessing that it will use some sort of component instance that are very, very easy to render. But when you try, to regenerate, this big, huge thing, that is where, it struggles a little bit. So I'm going to make it as big as this one. All right, now it seems like it's working. Cool. And I'm going to take it out of here. That's it. So now we have, this whole thing planted as PCGs, but you can see, even though this thing is supposedly to be, randomly scattered, you can see a pattern like everywhere, right? Again, this is just a sample, so it is not bound to be like very, very, very good about, scattering things around, right? But now let's see the actual magic, the thing that we already have, working here. So I'm going to select all these, and with enough luck, we should be able to click here, resimulate, and wait a couple of seconds, and that's it. Now I have a full scatter, trees, rocks, bushes, like everything. And all right, this is embarrassing. It might be that it's colliding with the actual PCG volume. Give me just a second. So I'm going to actually delete the PCG volume because we already, checked that out. Oh, all right, now it dropped. So I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the PCG. I don't care. I don't care about PCG right now. That's it. Let's delete it and have everything land. It didn't. So let me go back, Control C. One more. There it is. So let me get rid of the PCG volume first. That's it. Now grab all these procedural foliage and resimulate. And now it should work. There it is. So we shouldn't have things flying around. Yeah, everything is good now. So as you can see, this is procedural scattering of nature, right? And it is very organic in the sense that things are clumped. And this is one of the things that I really hope that they do next in PCGs, actually clumping of stuff, because you're really not working with masks, right? You're not really like saying, all right, this density or that density, should be the ones that you should be able to see or not see, right? This is more about how things grow in nature, right? You're bound to have like one big tree in the middle of a clump of trees like this one. And then, a couple of the same tree, growing around, being a little bit small, and, scatter around should be like a little bit of, bushes and rocks and stuff like that. And rocks are always together, right? In like little bunches. Like that is how you would expect nature to work. And this is just, and I check, the actual foliage actors of the rural Australia thing, and they're not very elaborated. Like you could elaborate a lot more into creating a very organic scattering. It's like very vanilla, and still this is the result that you get. So my thing is should we be learning right now PCGs, or should we first master the actual proceduralism inside Unreal? So we do have, not because this might be the thing that you will end up using in the end, right? But because you want to be sure that if you're going to do something with PCGs, so no one else is going to tell you, all right, you can do that already with proceduralism, right, inside Unreal. And your thing does not look very organic. Like this thing looks a lot better. So that's the main thing. So, all right, this has its own limitations, right? How does PCGs are better than this? Because you can, move them around. You can iterate with them a little bit more in that sense, right? Not to say that, this still takes its couple of seconds, to generate. And if you want, to delete everything about this thing, and regenerate it, we can see it like right now. If there should be an instance foliage actor like this one, and I can delete that foliage actor, and now I don't have any foliage. I can go and just regenerate, the trees, right? The trees small, and see how that looks, right? Because you might want to do a little bit of troubleshooting, right? Or debugging. And as you can see, this thing is also deterministic. Like you will have the same distribution every time until you change the seed. So again, the same thing as what you can do with PCGs. So PCGs right now only wins because you can move them real time. Like if I wanted to move this thing, I would have to actually delete that foliage actor, right? And grab, I don't know, in this case, maybe the tree smalls, and maybe move, this procedural volume to a side. And then I can regenerate this thing, and it will just generate on that, particular corner, right? But if I go, and recenter this thing as it was, give me just a second, like this, or maybe the same as this, right? Now I can regenerate, and it will generate, the rest of these. And this side, it's going to be, removed and replanted. So let me show you. If I resimulate like this, it will fix, this side. And that is, amazingly good. Now, you might say, well, I may have some sort of river or some sort of, town where I don't want this thing to be growing, right? Well, you also have at your advantage, let me delete this, and let me create an actor that I'm going to search here as procedural. And it's going to be the procedural foliage blocking volume, right? And I'm going to drop one here. And maybe around here, you are going to have some sort of, I don't know, town or something, right? And we can make it a little bit bigger. So what I want from this volume is to prevent anything procedural to grow here, right? This is just one of the ways. You can do it also with the actual layers from the from the landscape. But just as a example, I'm going to grab my tree smalls again, and I'm going to resimulate that thing. And there it is. As you can see, where I set up this blocking volume, that thing is not growing. Now, you will say, well, Gabriel, that is a square. Like, what if I don't want this to be a square? Well, you do have the new modeling tools. And so, modeling tools work also on volumes. So you can, divide these and have, any sort of shape that you want this thing to end up being, right? You can edit it with, poly editing. I don't know. You can grab maybe like, these. Can I move it around? Come on. There it is. So as you see, you can, give it the exact shape of what you want. If you're good with modeling tools, it should be, pretty easy. All right. You can encompass, any shape that you want here. And now the next time that I go here, and again, I'm just showcasing, I'm going a little bit more in detail on all of this, so you know how it works. Because I want you all at the end of this streaming to be able to compare what you can do with procedural foliage to what you can create with PCGs. And not to say, all right, PCG is crap, it doesn't work because it doesn't do this, is to challenge you into try to make PCG to do this. Because I'm sure that with enough nodes, you're going to be able to create things like this. For sure, I'm totally positive. Even in the state that it is now, you should be able to do something like this, but it's not as easy as drop like a couple of nodes and let, the magic of randomizations do the work. Like you're going to have to really think out, how to do these things, right? So now I should be able to, grab my instance foliage and, redo the small trees to simulate that. And that's it. Now it will have that particular shape in the blocking volume. All right. So another thing that we can learn, and this is like the whole magic about using the actual procedural foliage, and that is, give me just a second to clear my and that's it. That now that everything is planted, you can go to the actual foliage tool, right? And you can, select, let me select all these like this. And now I can select maybe this tree. And I will say, all right, it was good. How, the procedural thing thought that it should be, but now I can say, right, delete it, right? And it might be just because these are nanites and, there is a bug with nanites and the foliage tool, like whatever you select is not going to be the exact thing that you selected. So if you want to fix that, you can select, come on, deselect, be good. Deselect. You can select with, let me do this a lot more easier. Like right now you can see that even though the thing is planted everywhere, the actual instance count is 0. To fix that, you just need to go and paint once with everything, right? And then, delete. And now, the actual number of, all the instances that are in your level right now, it's going to be updated here. I don't know. That's a thing that happens, right? But now you can say, right, I don't like how this thing was here, right? I can maybe delete a couple of these, right? And you can keep. So this is another point, very important point, of using procedural foliage instead of PCGs, just because, you can afterwards do like a very tree per tree, actor per actor, modification. And also you can keep painting on those, right? Right now it's like too high of a paint density, 0.1, 0.01 might be the thing. And you can, help the actual proceduralism and make it, your own, right? In that sense, which is also great. All right. So yeah, now that we know that this thing exists and, all the things that we can do with it, how do we work with procedural foliage volumes? So let's get back to the start. This thing, it's so inside Unreal that it's not even a plugin, right? It's so inside Unreal that it's not even project settings. It is inside the editor preferences. So it is very part of the engine by now, right? This thing passed all the experimental beta plugin phases, and now it's a part of Unreal, like point light is, right? Like a landscape is, right? If you want to enable it, because now this is where I said, why Unreal? This thing is not on by default, right? You're going to have to go to editor preferences. And once that thing is on, and this is with any template that you can create something inside Unreal, you're going to type procedural, and that's it. This thing by default is off in every Unreal Engine instance that you just created, a new template, new project. This thing is going to be off. A little bit of coffee there. All right, so this thing is going to be off, and by it being off, the thing is that you're not going to be able. So if you right click and you go to foliage, there are only 3 things that you can create with normal foliage, right? The actual foliage actor, and this one is to distribute blueprints, right? So if you have like blueprint actors, you can create an actor foliage, and you're going to be able to distribute, this actor foliage. And you have, landscape grass type that you're going to be using in your landscape material, and you have static mesh foliage, right? That's real vanilla as it comes. But if now you activate the procedural foliage and you now check out this list in foliage, you're going to see that now you have this procedural foliage spawner, right? And this is like the big thing, right? This is the one that is going to allow you to create these volumes and to create this magically one-click made me a forest Unreal, right? There is another very weird stuff that is happening, that the reason why this thing is off. And one of the things that I found more weird about this thing being off by default is that in foliage, you can create actor foliages. And let me just create one of those because I need to get this out of my chest. Really, I'm having like a heart attack right now. My heart is pumping as I'm talking about this thing because it's so crazy, right? If I create one of those actors, foliage actors, right? And what this thing will, allow you to do is to distribute actual blueprints, right? So I can create also a blueprint here, and let me create, just a fast blueprint, blueprint class like this. It's going to be an empty one. And now I can grab this, and this is going to be, a light to be distributed, right? Let me, save both of these, and I can now open the actual blueprint, and I can create a static light, like a point light, sorry. And now this thing is just and let me, add a little bit more intensity to it. This is just an actor that happened to have a light inside it, right? So if I drop this thing here, you can see that now I do have a light, right? But you can create this, and this is without the procedural. I'm talking prior to that, right? So, and you can create this procedural actor foliage, and now I can add this light blueprint that I just created into this. And now you would think that because this is a foliage actor, I could be able to go to foliage tool and add it. Oh, it does allow me, right? Maybe I'm completely wrong about this part. Can I paint with this? Oh, I do can paint with this thing. All right, So yeah, I might be a little bit outdated with this tool, but yeah, you can paint, nowadays. This used not to be a thing. Maybe, you know what? It may be because I activated the procedural thing once in this project, and that's why I can add, that thing. So let me add a little bit of density to this thing, so you can see you can paint with actors, with the foliage tool also, right? And that's good. But another thing that you can do with these actors is to actually use them in procedurals. Let me show you how to do those procedurals now. So I'm going to grab this instance foliage like this, and I'm going to delete it. All the foliage that I just did. And I'm going to start, from the start. So first thing, let's go. Oh yeah, with placement mode, you can also do that. Like we covered placement mode a couple of weeks ago, which is also great. It does make a little bit of a mess. Like it does a better job by this, distributing actually meshes, because it will create this magical component actors that won't even show in your outliner, which is great. But when you try to distribute things that the placement tool cannot convert into that component, it will create like one of those here, one instance of that in the actual outliner, which makes the outliner to be, huge, right? But that doesn't happen when you use the foliage tool. Let me show you how. So let me go back to edit. Let me go back to editor preferences, and I'm going to turn on now procedural. Here it is, procedural foliage. Now that it's on, I'm going to be able to also, a part of these, I can create, let me go here, foliage, the procedural foliage spawner, right? So this is where things comes a little bit complicated, right? Because the actual naming of the stuff here is not great. It could be much, much better. So we do have actor foliage, and that is a foliage actor that happens to have a blueprint in it, all right? And just a blueprint class can be inside this one. Then you have the landscape grass type that doesn't have any foliage name on it, and this will only be used inside a landscape material. And then you have the static mesh foliage, and this is the one, that we all know about. This is the one that you can put inside a mesh, right? And then this is the new one. This is the procedural foliage spawner. And the procedural foliage spawner will allow you to create a list, right? So it will have a couple of attributes up here. But from here on, you can, start creating an array of different foliage type objects, all right? In which you're going to be able to assign either, let me create one of those also. So let me be clear here. So this is, let me go like this. This is the spawner actor. Spawner, asset, right? Because again, the actual color is the same, so it is a complete mess. So this is the spawner. This is the blueprint foliage actor. So this one will only work with blueprints. And now I'm going to create one for actual meshes, and that is the static mesh foliage. And as you see, they're all, so alike that it's very hard sometimes to know which is which. So this is the mesh foliage asset. And this should also be an asset, not an actor. Asset. That's right. All right. So let me go back and show you. So this is the actual spawner asset, right? And I can double click on it, and you can create a couple of elements to this array. So now I should be able to add maybe the foliage blueprint that I just created, right? And I can also drop these mesh, foliage asset, right? And this mesh foliage assets right now doesn't have anything in it. So let me populate it with anything. A 1 cube, a 1 meter cube, that is going to be all right for now, right? So now I do have in this, procedural asset, 2 foliage assets, right? One is an actor and one is a mesh, right? But now you need a way of, creating it into your scene. And this is where, this doesn't follow many rules inside Unreal. So I should be able to, save my spawner asset and drop it inside. All right, it does. So it will create the actual actor when you drop it inside. If you don't want to do it that way, you can also create the actual actor from here. So you can go here and say, look for a procedural. And here it is. So you have the procedural foliage volume. Or nowadays, as I see, you can actually drop the actual spawner into your scene. So let's do a little bit of a volume here so we can start to see this thing growing around. And I'm going to do first, very simple, distribution, a very dumb scattering, all right, as you will see. And now, as it is, I'm going to simply, spawn or resimulate, right? So what was created? Well, it created a bunch of of blueprints, right, with lights, and it spawned a bunch of cubes, right? And as you see, the lights are great to, are not great because they are killing my machine right now, but they do show, the actual nature. And this is, vanilla. This is just, me saying, all right, Unreal, take care of how you're going to distribute this thing. And it's really cool because you can see the actual shapes that it creates. And these kind of clumps and this kind of empty ball patches, this is very, very natural, right? This is very, so if you see these, you're going to say, all right, this is organic, right? This is actually procedural, a procedural way of distributing stuff, right? So let me get rid of the light actor because it's really killing my machine, and we can do a better comparison, right? So let's start by opening the actual foliage spawner. All right. It's down here, right? And I'm going to get rid of the possibility of this thing of spawning the light, right? So I'm going to delete the element from the array, and I'm for now going to just keep these cubes, right? This is what I want for now, and I'm going to re-spawn this so you can check it out, and we can start playing with what we can, achieve with this thing, right? So this is it, right? This is me spawning foliage into the scene with the foliage spawner. And a couple of things that we can start noticing is that it does have, by default, a little bit of scattering, right? With, very good empty spots, but also you do have like big cubes and smaller cubes surrounding it, right? So you have those clumps, right, of stuff happening here. So how does this work, right? Well, the laws that will rule how this thing will spawn are not inside the actual spawner, right? Are not inside this spawner asset. There are a couple of things here that you will notice pretty soon. We're going to talk a little bit about this, that you can change to make this thing a little bit better. Mostly when you are trying to create like a very huge forest, you're going to have to tweak a little bit, these attributes. But for the rest, they are going to be in the actual foliage asset, right? And again, this foliage asset is not a separate foliage asset. It's the same foliage asset that you're going to create when, you go to your, foliage tool like this. And, you could add another actor here. Let's just add anything. Like, let me just add any static mesh. Anything will do, like, I don't know, like this little tree here. I'm going to add it here. So you're going to see that it, even though I just, drag and drop it, what I see here is not an actual mesh or static mesh asset. This is already a foliage asset, right? So if I double click on it, you can see that it does have inside the actual mesh asset, but this is actually already an static, it does have a weird name. So let me just check it. It will create one of these static mesh foliage, right? This is already a static mesh foliage asset that is not saved outside here. It is saved within the actual level, right? If you want these to be, if you already, say, let me just test this thing. So I'm going to paint with this actual tree that I just added. And you can see that it does have an actual distribution to it because of the density and blah, 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 right? So if you already, said that this thing distribute like maybe like this, let me make my brush a little bit bigger. Nope, not that. Come on, Unreal. Do the proper thing. That's it. So if you paint with this and you are already, happy with how this thing is distributed and with all the rules that you can apply to it, if it will align to a normal or the height, the size variation and everything, then you can save this as an actual static mesh foliage asset, right? And that you do by using this saving little disk right here. And now I can go to my content and say, right, yeah, this is going to be the SM grass type, foliage type, etc., etc. Now, if I go here to my, sorry, it should have not been in the content, but in the rural Australia content, that's where we are working right now. Now you can see that I do have an actual foliage actor here. No, it's not a foliage actor. It is a, let me say the actual real name of this thing. It is the static mesh foliage asset, right? Out of this. Cool. Now we do have two of those. We have this cube and we have this, tree, right? So the actual laws on how this thing will grow inside here are inside each and every one of these assets, right? And let's open one so you can check it out. In fact, let me show you one thing. If you go to editor preferences right now and I turn off procedural, let me show you how this works. So by default, this thing is off, right? And you have already these two type of assets, right? And if you double click on it, you're going to have, many attributes for this thing, right? Like, again, if it's going to align to a normal, how high, at what height maximum this thing can grow, with what slope of the terrain, and you can do many things here, right? But there is no procedural settings here, right? Now let's check this out. As soon as I turn on procedural, now if I go and edit the actual foliage mesh, static mesh foliage asset, now you see that I do have a procedural tab on this thing, right? Which is weird, right? It's like they plug it right into things that already work. So it just, whatever this thing does is just adding one asset that is the procedural actually, volume, and one actor that is the procedural volume inside your level. That is the only thing that the actual procedural thing does, right? So now inside here, you can see that it does have a couple of rules, right? And you can see that it does have a couple of different defaults, and this is how it looks by default. So let me try and show you what that is. So you're going to have like things like growth and clustering and collision and density falloff, etc., etc. So let's talk a little bit about the density falloff. That is the the easiest of all, right? What this will do is very, very dumb and simple. The actual curve that you can design here will actually separate it from the border of the volume, right? That's the only density, and it has a weird name because it is called like the density fall off, and you would think that is the actual density, between them, but it's really not. It's just how you can modulate this thing surrounding the actual volume. So if I turn this on, right, and I grab let me get out of foliage mode. Let me grab the actual spawner, and I'm going to respawn this thing like this. You can see that however you create this actual graph, this curve, it's you saying to this thing, I don't want you near, the border of the volume. That's the whole thing. The actual distribution of this thing is going to be exactly the same. Like if I turn it off and I resimulate, you can see that everything is exactly as it was, but now it grows up to the every corner of this volume. So this is like a nice thing to have if you're going to have more than, if you don't want to create like the full distribution for your whole thing, but you want like a couple of islands of patches of vegetation of some sort of or type. Well, you can create it this way, because now I can move this thing around there, and I can turn on, my density curve like this, and I can resimulate that thing there. And now you can see that now it does have like a different shape to it, right? And now, this could look pretty fine, right? So that's it. Now, if you want another of these, you can, duplicate, the actual spawner, and now I can resimulate this one down there, and I have another patch there, right? So that is also pretty good, right? So let me get rid of this copy, and let me get rid for now again of the instance foliage, and let's keep working with this volume right here, right? So yeah, this thing here is fairly easy, right? The actual density curve, I won't use it for now. I want to now talk a little bit about the actual clustering, right? Because this is where all the magic happens. Like growth is amazing because this is what is going to allow you to change the actual size, right, of everything that is going to be procedurally grown or scatter. But for now, let's talk about clustering, and this is where all the magic happen. So you have things like seeds per step and the number of steps, right? So to understand this, let's set them both to 1 and 1, right? The seed per steps and the number of steps, right? What this will do, if I now go here, and the thing is that weirdly enough, you don't need to save this thing for these changes to happen, which is weird. But it's how it works. So now I can resimulate. And what I'm going to have right now are just parents, right? These are just the original spawns, meaning that there are all the same tree that will be the same age, right? This is a parent tree distribute, all around. This is, how you do it, right? Now, if you want this thing to be more dense or less dense, you have the initial seed density, and this is this 1. As you see, it does have like a pattern, right? And that pattern is going to be every time the same. You can resimulate this thing as many times as you want, and it will still have, the same distribution, okay? And that is because of the actual seed, and the seed is around here. This one distribution seed, it's set to 0 because it will inherit the one that is on the actual spawner, all right? And we're going to get to that pretty soon. But if you want this thing to be a little bit more dense on just parents, you can set these to be 2, right? And now if I resimulate, you can see that there are more of the actual, parent types of this seed. And this is mostly what PCG can do now. Like you can randomly create a new distribution with some bulb patches and some groups, right? But there are not clumps, right? There are just one step in the generation of this thing, right? Which is good. Now I'm going to make it a little bit lower, right? Because now I want you to start checking the magic of this thing, right? So let me set this at 0.3 maybe and resimulate. All right, so now we do have a couple of these master trees or master distribution, right? And now let's check about these seed per step, right? Now if I change these to be 3, right, and I go here and resimulate, you're going to see that now there is a chance that one of these master trees or big trees should have a couple of childrens around, exactly like that. There are, it's going to be the same tree, but a little bit smaller, and near it, right, you're going to start having those clumps of, trees around. So these are the number of seeds that that master tree will scatter around, and there is an actual distance at which that seed, can appear. So to make this more apparent, I'm going to make like 10 of those. So now we should have like one big tree, like in this case. And of course, this is also random. This doesn't mean that each and every one of these trees will have 10 trees around. It will have at most 10 trees around. For example, this one happens to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those around, right? There are others that are going to be only one. This one didn't have, any children's around. These ones have a couple of those. And once they start mixing, is a little bit harder to check who is who, right? But let me just keep with this one right here that is pretty obvious, right? That this is the parent and this is a couple of children's around. So now you do have an average spread distance and the actual spread distance, right? So the spread distance is going to be in centimeters. So these dudes around the little children's around the big tree or the original seed are going to be at most, not at most, the average seed distance is going to be 50. So I can set this thing to 0, and they are going to be, in average, 50 centimeters. So if I now resimulate, you can see that they are going to be like the same distance from the actual parent. And if I take this even closer, like maybe 10, you're going to see that they are going to be closer to the actual parent. And I can take it even lower, and they are going to be very, very close to the parent, all right? Again, you do have this collision thing that we're going to talk about this very soon. So we should use, things about 100. But if I set this, all right, let me do one thing. I'm going to set this collision and the shade radius to 0 so we can actually see this thing, all right? So now they're all bunched together. And now I can, take this average to maybe 50. And now you can see the actual distance of this thing happening, right? And again, because they don't have a collision, they might collide with each other. Right now, we're just, separating the seeds from the parent. And now you can also take this spread variance. So this will be like a plus. It's going to add or subtract to this actual average. So if I set the average to be 500, right? I can add to that 200. So it's going to be between 700 and 300, right? Now if I simulate, you can see that you get a little bit of a random distribution around the actual seed. This is all fine and dandy, right? Now I can take my collision radius because I know that this thing is like a meter or it's a meter cube. I can set the actual collision so they don't bunch together, should be at least 50, I guess. So the radius of it, exactly. So now they are not going to interpenetrate each other. So they're going to actually, respect, that distance between them and from their parent also. And that is, good. Let's shorten, this distance just a little bit, right? So let's take this to be 200 and this one to be 100 and the actual collision among them to be 50. Now let's resimulate, and this is what you get, clumps of, this same thing happening. Now, you might ask, well, what is this number of steps for? Well, This can happen more than one time. You have one parent with a bunch of childrens. Well, every one of those childrens could have childs of their own, right? And this is like the next generation. So for how many generations this thing is going to, happen? So this might be, 3 generations. So that means that this tree is going to have another tree, and that tree is going to have another tree, and that tree, that's it. It's going to be the last generation in this distribution. Now let's resimulate. And this is what we get, small patches of, forest, right? And this is where you want, to start playing with the actual spreading. So these should be a little bit higher, maybe 500 in average with 300 variance. And the density is good. So now let's resimulate. Right, and this is what we get. So now, as you would think, we might talk a little bit about the actual growth, and this is where you're going to get, your actual difference between, the height of the oldest tree and the new trees around, right? So right now, it says that the max age is 10, right? And you're going to have like a procedural scale between 5 and 3. So let's make this max age a little bit higher, like 50. And these will go from 0.2 to 10. And let's resimulate. And now it is very, very apparent who is, the top tree, the initial tree. So you can see that this is a father tree that happens to have, these child trees, and these child trees have, these other bunch of little trees around. So this makes it very, very amazingly powerful, because now the only thing that I got to do is to actually change, the actual mesh that is being, spawned. And in this case, I'm going to actually, find a tree. Maybe one of these horrible PCG trees, so we can show, the actual difference. And that's it. Now we do have a very nice and very organic distribution of this thing, right? You have little trees in clumps with big trees that happens to have smaller trees and smaller trees around. So, and let me fix one thing right here, and that should be the, how it's called? Do I have it already? No. Let me fix the shadow. So the shadow is virtual threshold. No, I will need to go and check the actual documentation to fix the shadowing issues here. And that is because, these are not nanite shapes. That's the only reason why the shadow might go nuts like that. But as you can see, it's very, very, very good. This is like the way to really plan this thing. So I don't want to, push these too hard. I just want you to see that there are actually ways of doing proceduralism inside Unreal right now, and there are very, very amazing, and they have been vastly used in many contents around this thing, so it's no secret. So I want the word to be spread as these actual instances are spread, right? I want you to know that this thing exists. So if you want to start learning about PCG, go ahead, learn it. All right. Suffer as I'm suffering, trying to find, actually current information about them so you can learn them, or start, playing with those nodes and trying to create something like this. So when you get to this point, when you get to be able to create this, you know that you have mastered what already Unreal offers. So that is where, the actual PCG is going to be totally useful. So if you get to the point that you can create something like this with one click, right? And with just a couple of, very understandable, features on how this thing works, like the growth and the clustering and the fall-off and stuff, like this thing goes even further because, we might not cover it today because I don't know what time is it. We went already an hour and a half, but you already have like this, the shade radius, and this shade radius, what it does is it will allow things to not grow in the shadow of, big trees. So you can set a couple of bush that should, because it shouldn't grow on the actual shade of these trees. So let me go about it. Why not? We still have like 20 minutes of this stream. So let's go about it. Why not? Right. So now what I'm going to do is try to grow bushes, right? Around, these big trees. And because these big trees create so much shadow, those bushes should not grow, in the shadow of these trees. So those are going to be these ones right here, right? So I'm going to open up the actual spawner asset, and I'm going to add a new element to the array. Sorry. And now I can add the actual bush right there. And let's see how this works, because how this works, by default, right? So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to re-simulate. And this is what we get. So we do have like a fight, right, between the actual tree and the little bush, right? And you see that in some places, the distribution of the actual tree goes, a little bit more predominant, and the actual bush a little bit less. So let's fix that. So let's open up now. This one is good. Now I'm going to open up the distribution, right? The actual static mesh foliage actor, the static mesh foliage asset, and edit it, right? And again, all of these, it's, not important. The important part is, the procedural part. So first of all, I'm going to say this thing should not grow in the shade, right? So, can grow in a shade? I'm going to say, nope, it cannot. And now let's re-simulate this thing. And you're going to see that now, the actual trees grows a little bit in density, right? Like back there. But now you can see that it doesn't respect it too much. And that is because this one right here, I turned off the actual shade radius, right? So now I can say, all right, this shade radius should be maybe 200. Now, if I go here and resimulate, that is going to tell, this little bush right here that is too big right now compared to this tree, that, it's not being clumped, near the shadow of the big trees. And now you can keep on, doing the actual collision of this bush. Maybe it's too high. Maybe it should be a little bit smaller, maybe like 20. And the shade radius of this one might be, 0. Let's create like only 1 and 1 just to check the actual parents of these bushes. Now you can check where are those parents. And they are a little bit big, so I want them all to be a little bit smaller. So I can go to the growth side, and I can say that I want the minimum to be 0.1 and the maximum to be 1. And cannot spawn in shade. That's good. Now let's resimulate this thing. Now you can see that it will just be more spread around, like far away from this thing. Now let's make the actual density to be a lot higher, maybe 10. All right. So you can check out how, and this is also important, having everything that you want to grow into just one spawner is how you're going to be able to fix the fact that if you have like 2 of these volumes together, they might grow things in the same place by accident, right? Because the actual collision and the shade radius that you have here is not going to be shared among different volumes just by the same volume. So this is like a tango. Like the more you add of this, the more you're going to, rob the other one. So the actual density and the shadow and the shadow collision and the actual collision is a thing that you're going to have to work, right? And there is one more thing, if I don't forget, that you can use. It's not important. So you can keep on playing with this, right? And at some point, you're going to get something exactly like this. So, and this is what is amazing about this thing. And that's it. You have a big forest with one click, all right? So that takes us to the end. Again, just as a review, if you want to play with this procedural foliage, I'm going to share a video which taught me everything about this thing. Like I knew about how to work with it, but not as in depth as I just showed you if it wasn't for that content creator. So I'm going to link that video in the comments of this stream so you can, maybe I should do it like right now so you can, it doesn't matter. I will do it, as soon as we finish this thing. So if you want to have like a more in-depth explanation on how to use this procedural stuff, that again, just for the newcomers that are here, this is not PCG. This is something that exists already and has exist in Unreal since, I don't know, like 4.19 or 20, something like that. So a lot of, a long time in the past, we already have this thing working. So if you want to play more with this thing, create pretty cool things with this that will challenge you later on to learn PCGs and make something as good at this, you're welcome, right? You're welcome to do it, and then, show me how you do it, all right? So I'm going to keep on practicing this thing. Let me go back to my camera so I can say my goodbyes for today. I'm going to close this, and of course, don't save it. And yeah, I mean, thank you all so much for coming here and listen to my ramblings about how difficult it is PCG right now to work with. It is good. I think it has a very, very nice future, but I'm dumbfounded on how they release it in this, shape and form where it doesn't do what Unreal already does. So that is weird, right? They are very, very amazing. And I know that very soon we're going to have, content in the market with a bunch of things, there are bunkers, right? And bananas and how to do it procedural with PCGs. But for now, I just want you to check this thing and know how to work with it so you can compare, right? So for now, that's going to be it. Remember to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Remember to turn on notifications for new videos. I'm going to be pumping out more videos, at least one video per week, because the video format is also good, not just the actual live stuff. And let's, keep on Animation Tuesday. Like we didn't have Animation Tuesday last week because I had issues with an electrical problem, in the building. But now that is fixed. So we are for sure going to be covering more of animation in the year of animation. All right. So that's it. Take care of each other. Be good to each other. I love you all so much, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you for coming, and bye-bye.